Okay. Hello. My name is Serena. This is my first time trying to go live, so please be patient with me. I want to do sign by sign horoscopes for the month of March. The thing about March is it's a big, huge month with a lot of big, huge planetary changes. So the changes that happen in March are very long lasting. So it's not really just for March. A little bit about me too, for anybody tuning in that does not know me. I've been studying astrology for 20 years, since I was 16 years old. I've been studying astrology in depth for the last 10 years with in-person and online teachers for year-long classes and in-depth personal study. I've taken 3 different year-long courses with 3 different teachers. I studied with Adam Ellenboss and his year-long ancient astrology for modern times course on Hellenistic astrology. I took a year-long in-person course with Diane Clark, and I did a year-long course, The Wheel of the Year, Astrology, Herbalism, and Magic with Petra Tushart. And I did a 3-month course with Ren Butler on archetypal astrology and dreams. He wrote the book, The Archetypal Universe, among others, but that's a really great one. I encourage everybody to check that out. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I studied counseling at a master's level for a little bit with an emphasis on ego psychology, somatic psychology, and my own research involved psychedelics. And I love it when psychedelics and astrology coincide. I think astrology is very psychedelic, i.e., mind manifesting on many levels. I also have 3 kids, 16-year-old daughter, 12-year-old son, and soon to be 2-year-old son. And I do balloons. I'm a balloon twister. That's my day job. But I really hope to be incorporating more and more astrology and doing things like making more and more videos. So bear with me as I learn to get better and better at this. Okay, so in March, just a very quick overview. I did about a 25-minute video for a little bit longer overview of the basics of what's happening in March. But really quickly, Pluto on March 23rd is changing signs after the last 14 years in Capricorn, is moving into Aquarius. It's only going to be there for a few months before, because of retrograde action, it moves back into Capricorn for a few months, and then it'll come back into Aquarius for about 9 months, and then retrograde back into Capricorn in 2024, and then it'll come back into Aquarius for good by 2025. But we're going to get a little taste this year. And then Saturn, after 3 years in Aquarius, is moving into Pisces, where it will stay for 2.5 to 3 years. And that happens on Tuesday, March 7th. And then on March 25th, Mars will move from Gemini, where it has been for 6 months, to Cancer, where it will be for about 2 months. Mars does not usually spend 6 months in the sign, so it has felt like an eternity with Mars there, so it counts as kind of a big shift too. So all these are big shifts that are happening, and they're not the only things happening, and it's really hard with astrology to encapsulate everything. Anytime anybody's talking anything about anything happening astrologically, it's only one tiny piece of the puzzle. So keep that in mind and take what resonates and leave what doesn't. I'm going to be going backwards basically through the zodiac. I'm going to start with Pisces and then go to Aquarius and Capricorn and on, because I think Pisces, Aquarius, and Capricorn are experiencing this in the biggest ways, since all these planets are, well, almost all these planets are Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces related right now. Okay, so you move my chart here around that I'm looking at. looking at Pisces on March 25th, just to make sure all the planets are where they're going to be. Okay, so for Pisces, in March, Saturn and Mercury are going to be moving into your first house. So it's not only about where they're going into, but where they're coming from. So it's leaving your 12th house and entering your first house, Saturn and Mercury. So Saturn is a planet often associated with restriction, authority, discipline, the parents growing up in a often painful way, responsibility, and also the teeth and bones. So, as an example of Saturn in the first house, my 16-year-old daughter is an Aquarius rising. That's the sign that Saturn's been in for the last 3 years. She got braces on, teeth, and braces are a very Saturnian device. They're about restriction and structure. She got braces on about exactly 3 years ago when Saturn moved into her first house of the self and health and how you look. And to the day almost, she gets her braces off after almost 3 years tomorrow, March 6th, the day before Saturn leaves her first house and moves into her second. So that's been her Saturn in the first experience. Now, is everybody going to get braces on that's Pisces rising? No, but sometimes it can be very literal like that. It can be something to do with your teeth or with your bones gaining more structure um, or more focus. It can also just be about more responsibility. It could be about more discipline. And sometimes it can feel really harsh and depressive and heavy. Um, so, something I want to note about all astrological transits, it's really easy to get into the sense of anxiety about them. Um, for a longer discussion on this, I really recommend Adam Ellenboss's of Nightlight Astrology. He has a video upload about how to deal with anxiety over astrological transits, and it's really great, and I recommend everybody listen to that multiple times. Um, but basically, number one, let's try to focus on the best case scenarios and the good that will come of even the bad. And number two, life is full of challenges, and also there's always something good happening at the same time as the challenges. There's always a mitigating factor. When you come out of a Saturn transit, you often feel more grown up. You feel more of an authority figure of your own self. You feel more of a sense of self-discipline, more structure, better boundaries. So that's something that Pisces rising, I'm doing these for Pisces for rising signs. They can also absolutely apply to sun signs too, though. So you can listen for your rising sign or your sun sign and see how you think it might apply. So for Pisces rising, expect to come into a little bit more self-discipline and structure and responsibility by the time this transit is over. It doesn't happen overnight. Some things you might notice right away already, but it could take the whole 2 to 3 years to really understand what this transit means. Mercury going into your first house for the month of March, that'll be a short transit just for March. And Mercury in the first house can make you more talkative, have more ideas, might want to do more research on things, more reading, want to do more writing, do more communicating. Um, you might feel more social. Might be something literal like a sibling coming to visit when they haven't for a while or don't usually. Mars also exits its shadow period March 15th, and that will be it'll still be in your fourth house at that point. It'll still be in Gemini, but it will have entered that shadow um, sometime back in September or October. So you can think back to links from back then, and something that has been going over since then um, will come to some kind of resolution and move forward in a bigger way. as of March 15th, and it could have something to do with your physical home, your family, your roots, your home base. Fourth house is also to do with your home country. Okay, now for the big one, Pluto moving into Aquarius on March 23rd. It will be moving from your 11th house, Capricorn, into your 12th house with whole sign houses. Um, and mutable signs, so Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, on the 5th and 6th of March, get the semi-square of Pluto to their sun. So if you have your sun or your ascendant at 0 degrees of the mutable signs, that's when the semi-square hits. So that's something to pay attention to. But Pluto moving into your 12th house from your 11th house. So 11th house, there could have been big transformations in your friend groups, in your tribe, in the people that are supposed to be helping you towards your 12th house goals. I mean, your 10th house goals in career. Um, or it could have been over the last 14 years. So the transformation of your friends, the transformation of your friend groups, maybe hanging out with or being in groups with powerful people, intense people, Plutonian people, primal people. Moving into your 12th house, the 12th house is more of a hidden house. Sometimes the transits here can be harder to see. Might have something to do with institutions such as, and it's going to be for the next 20 years playing out, some kind of transformation of the institutions you're involved with or your feelings towards them. Schools, churches, medical facilities, jails, prisons. These are all very 12th house things. Pluto's influence might be subtle and it might be intense. You'll notice more activation of what this means when the luminaries, the sun or the moon, hit Pluto and go through Aquarius every month. I'm going to read a little bit from Transit Simplified by Francis Sakowin and Louise Acker on Pluto in the 12th house. Pluto transit through the 12th house. Use of resources of the subconscious memory, penetrating insights into the workings of the unconscious mind, profound spiritual insights, if well aspected, interest in meditation, mysticism, and occult practices, need to regenerate subconscious habit patterns, involvement with secret intrigues, danger from secret enemies or negative psychic practices if afflicted, danger of institutionalization if afflicted, secret sexual involvements. I would grant that more to Mars personally, but that's what they had to say about it. Okay, I got to try to keep this short and sweet, which is very hard to do. But if I go more than 10 minutes per sign, then we're heading over 2 hours. Okay, so moving on, March moving into Cancer on March 25th. That's your 5th house, going from your 4th house where it has stayed for a very long time. There might be coming out of a 6-month period of where you had to be the leader in your home and family, or where there were more disagreements and arguments in your home and family, more action in your home and family. Might be a lot of stuff happening at home. And moving into the 5th house of children, creativity, small business, romance, fun and play and recreation. This might be a time where your children or creative projects are facing some kind of competitiveness. Mars can be quite literal sometimes in its ability to cut off or sever or tear in some way. It could be quite literal, like a danger to your creative products. And I hate to say things like a danger to your children because most likely they will be absolutely fine. But there is a danger of some kind of small accidents. With it just being Mars, I wouldn't consider it to be a danger of anything too huge. Um, but sometimes this transit does bring minor injury. Um, but most likely it's more about um, competitiveness or willfulness. Maybe your children get more willful and obstinate, um, or since it's in Cancer, passive aggressiveness or just more aggressiveness. Um, or even in your creative projects, maybe your creative projects take on a Martian turn and become maybe whatever it is, whatever your medium is more Martian. The color red, anger, fighting expressed. Um, okay, and also Jupiter continues to be in your second house, joined by Venus, um, for the month of March. Should be good for money, um, and learning new skills. There really should be some kind of big blessing there. Even if there are big expenditures, you should have enough to cover it. Okay, moving on to Aquarius. Hello. I do see there's a couple people there. I don't quite have this figured out to where I can see the chat or anything at the same time that I'm looking at my other screens here. But I'll try to check back in occasionally. If I'm talking about your sign and you um, would like to raise your hand and mention that you're that sign, I would appreciate that. And we can talk a little bit to you personally in the chat about what's going on with you or any questions you might have. Okay, moving on to Aquarius, though. So for Aquarius, you have Saturn leaving your first house for the second house. You might get more responsible, restrictive with managing your money. Not to say you haven't been responsible already, but you're going to feel more grown up around ready. Maybe if your credit's been bad, it undergoes some kind of healing, or maybe if you've never even started to build credit, you start building credit, or you pay off some debts, um, or you just start saving money more, some kind of restriction around money and growing up around managing money, or maybe even skills, learning some more professional skills in order to make more money. Saturn leaving your first house. So it's not only about where it's going, it's where it came from. Um, like I mentioned earlier, my Aquarius rising daughter gets her braces off the day before Saturn leaves Aquarius for Pisces, after 3 years of having them on. So for most people, it's not going to be so quite as literal, but some kind of Saturn in the first definitely, I think, feels more heavy and possibly depressive, and these growing pains than Saturn in any other house. Um, so there's some relief there for Aquariuses, over what they've been dealing with, in huge growing pains over the last few years. Now it's moving into your money house. Okay, so Pluto also, though, don't get too excited. Pluto is entering your first house on the 23rd. Um, let's see. So Pluto going from your leaving its long stay in your 12th house to move into your first house. People, natives with Pluto in the first house are said to be, they're said to make strong impressions, have this very powerful aura around them, kind of formidable. They tend to be very deep, um, and they tend to have an intensity to them. And this doesn't come from nowhere. Usually there's been a lot of trauma that they've had to deal with and process, that has made them into who they are. So there's no sugarcoating that Pluto's transit through your first house over the next 20 years, what you're gonna get a tiny taste of here, could completely transform you as a person. You likely won't be recognizable, which, I mean, anybody 20 years later isn't gonna be super recognizable, but especially for you guys for this transit. There could be some very, deep and tragic and, um, traumatic things that happen. And again, for anybody just now tuning in or that fast forwarded to this point, please don't let anxiety over astrological transits ruin your life. Adam Alabas has a really great video upload about dealing with anxiety over astrological transits. We all have shit happen sometimes. And it's about cultivating, to me, my astrology is very got a very spiritual grounding. And it's always about cultivating your connection to the divine in your own eyes. All suffering is grace, and grace is anything that brings us closer to God, and God is up to each and every one of us to decide for ourselves. I know lots of Capricorn risings that just got done with having Pluto's transit through their first house over the last 14 years, and they all survived, but they dealt with some heavy stuff. I know somebody that's Capricorn rising that dealt with the suicide of a parent. I know somebody that's Capricorn rising that dealt with their girlfriend losing a parent in a plane crash. I know somebody that's Capricorn rising that just has dealt with a lot of health issues over the past years, and the first house is about health. Um, and they've all come out of it a bit more deep, maybe a little bit more chilled out, um, but also more powerful for it. And Pluto also adds a certain magnetism that I enjoy. Okay, again, trying to make this quick. Only 10 minutes on each side. It's hard to do. Let me check the chat again here. Okay. Okay, so Mars is entering your 6th house on March 25th. This can do with having to take on a leadership role at work. Possible Mars is the house of sickness, service, work, daily routine. Could possibly some kind of be inflammatory injuries to or illnesses to take care of. Maybe that has to do with your siblings, because Mars rules Aquarius's 3rd house of siblings. There could be, so yeah, leadership at work. There could be arguments or competitiveness at work too. Or maybe the kind of work you're doing is Martian. Maybe it's working with violence in some way, or with victims of violence in some way, or working with sports and athleticism in some way, or working with illnesses and injuries in some way. Again, also could apply to your siblings, because Mars rules your 3rd house of siblings for Aquariuses. Okay, and Jupiter is going to continue to be in your 3rd house, joined by Venus. Lots of reading, studying, spending time in libraries or community centers, short trips with friends, driving, car-related blessings. My Aquarius rising daughter just renewed her permit and will hopefully be getting her license soon. She's definitely she has a couple of different short trips planned in May. So that's the Jupiter in the 3rd house blessing. Okay, moving on to Capricorns. So Capricorn, Saturn will be moving from your 2nd house to your 3rd house. I have here in my notes that on the 5th and 6th, so that's today and tomorrow, Saturn brings the exact semi-square to January sun signs, Capricorn sun signs. So that's something to watch out for, a little bit of tension. Um, Other than that, Saturn moving into the 3rd house, community management, community authority in your community, in your neighborhood, amongst your siblings, um, community structuring, community growth, um, or authority structure and growth through short trips or traveling. Saturn in your 3rd house could be self-discipline and studying, um, could be, uh, being an authority figure at school, um, could be just more self-discipline, um, in those matters. Um, Pluto's gonna be moving from your 1st house to your 2nd house, which we already talked about that a little bit, what Capricorns have been dealing with the last 14 years. So Pluto going into your 2nd house, just, for a little, hint about what that might be about, your 2nd house of finances, skills, resources, money, earned money, and, so over the last 14 years, Joe Biden, Prince William, Jennifer Lawrence, Scarlett Johansson, Kim Kardashian, and Jimin of BTS are all Sag risings that just had Pluto in the 2nd house for the last 14 years. So these are all people that had major changes to their financial structure, I think, in the last 14 years, major transformation and intensity in their financial sectors. Joe Biden becoming president, changed, and all this money laundering through Ukraine and stuff changed his finances quite a bit. Um, Prince William, upgraded to Prince. I'm sure that came with some kind of financial intensity. Jennifer Lawrence and Scarlett Johansson being two of the top paid actresses in Hollywood right now, happened with Pluto in their 2nd house. Kim Kardashian over the last 14 years marrying Kanye, and just a lot of intense financial stuff for her the last 14 years. Jimin from BTS, I mean, intense change to his financial picture over the last years. All the BTS guys, to some degree, have had intense transformation of their financial life and their skills over the last 14 years. So that's something that Capricorn risings have to look forward to over the next 20 years. Um, Pluto has a weird orbit, so it stays in different signs longer than other signs. So it's going to stay in Aquarius for 20 years, whereas Capricorn, it was only about 14 years. Um, Powerful money. That's going to come up for you. Some powerful money, some fuck you money. Okay. All right. Let me check on this. Okay. So Capricorn risings, Mars is leaving your 6th house where it's been for the last 6 months and hopefully alleviating any health issues, minor or major, you've been experiencing over the past 6 months, maybe related to surgery or inflammatory issues, anger-related health issues. It's entering your 7th house. So it could be somebody taking a leadership role in partnerships or yourself taking a leadership role in partnerships, sexual partnerships. It could be literal cutting off of relationships. There could be a lot of tension and uh, perhaps competitiveness or anger related to your intimate relationships. Now, for most people and most times, they'll experience a Mars transit to their 7th house about every 2 years for 2 months. Um, so it's not that rare, and you've done this before. Um, but those are some things that it might be about. It could also be like your partners or intimate relations taking on something competitive, some kind of competitive sport or athleticism, or starting to go to the gym or something that makes them sweat. Um, yeah. Okay. Moving on to Sagittarius risings. So for Sagittarius risings, Aquarius Pluto's gonna be moving into Aquarius March 23rd, and that's your 3rd house. It has been in your 2nd house over the last 14 years for Sagittarius risings. There might have been some kind of intense transformation of your money and financial picture. Now it's moving on to your 3rd house. The 3rd house is, it's not like a super VIP strong house, so it could be more subtle. Um for clues as to what that transit's about, Pluto in the 3rd house, you wanna look to Scorpio risings who have been experiencing that for the last 14 years. Um, I think it can be about, powerful changes to your communication methods, learning to communicate powerfully, refining your speech, um, transformation of your community and neighborhood and how you see your community and neighborhood. I'm Scorpio rising, and I moved a lot growing up. For the first, I went to 11 different schools growing up. Really no stability. Really no like neighborhood. I felt I belonged to or community. And then over about since 2012, so 11 years ago, I moved into a house that I've lived in permanently for that last 11 years. So that was a Pluto in the 3rd house thing. Like, I have to get to know my neighbors now. I know my neighbors. Like, we exchange food and our kids go play with each other, and I know their names and I would recognize them in the grocery store, which is all very weird for me. Um, but yeah, so those are some changes like Pluto in your 3rd house, changes to your community and neighborhood and how you see them and your neighbors. Um Maybe some powerful relationships with your neighbors and in your neighborhood, and also siblings. I had powerful changes to my relationship with my one sibling, um, and that's something else that Sagittarius risings might be looking forward to. Um, Also, the 3rd house can be associated with our mind in some modern astrology. So Pluto moving there could be about getting deeper with your access to your subconscious, maybe going to therapy, um, maybe helping to heal the mind in an intense way and your thoughts. Okay, for Sagittarius risings, also Saturn is moving into your 4th house from your 3rd house. This can be a time of structure and foundations of your physical home. Parents experiencing Saturnian restriction, traditional family happenings, long lasting family and home things, death of elder family members. So again, we could look to Scorpio risings for how they've been experiencing Saturn through the 4th house. I'm Scorpio rising. I had multiple family members get married with Saturn's trek through the 4th house. We got new floors in our house. That's very foundational. Um, I welcomed a new child, which came with lots of more responsibility at home and to my family. My father had a stroke and stopped working, retired early, basically, while Saturn moved through my 4th house. Also, my mother-in-law uh, died unexpectedly while Saturn moved through my 4th house, so death of elder family members. Um, but really, all in all, I haven't felt like it was super uh, depressive. It's been hard, but not the worst. Not as bad as Saturn through the 1st house. Um, and really, it could be quite literal, just with more foundation, more boundaries around home, who you're letting into your home, more boundaries with your family members. I put up some major walls with certain family members over the past few years too. So that's something that Sagittarius risings might be looking at. Um, Also, for Sagittarius rising, Mars on March 25th, moving into your 8th house for a couple of months. Uh, Again, looking to Scorpio risings, what they've been dealing with for the last 6 months, with a very extended stay of Mars in their 8th house of debts, loans, inheritances, wills, and insurance matters. I have definitely been dealing with all that a whole lot. and I know other Scorpio risings that have too. So you're going to get a smaller taste of that, of a little bit of focus. Maybe it's time to get a will written up. Maybe it's time to change your insurance, get life insurance. Um, Maybe something to do with some inheritance that is owed to you comes up. There can be maybe it's a time where you take out some loans or are thinking about taking out loans, or where your debt increases. Maybe there might be some contention around those matters. Okay. Moving on to Scorpio rising. Okay, for Scorpios, Saturn is moving into your fifth house after leaving your fourth house. Fifth house is about children, romance, play, recreation, small business, creativity. Um, Saturn moving into your fifth house might literally be getting married, the solidification, Saturn of romance. Your children getting married, children gaining responsibility or growing up in some way, maybe through hardship like loss or dealing with grief. So I've seen people with Saturn through their fifth house. I've seen their children get married, but I've also seen their children get divorced. Um, uh, Creative discipline. I've seen people talk about with Saturn's trek through the fifth house. They really had to get intentional and disciplined with their creative projects and have watched some kind of creative project gestate and get ready to be born. Um, Solidifying the structures and foundations of your small business could be something to look forward to. Boundaries with your children. You might have to create more boundaries with your children, or Saturnian things happen to your children. Like I have, um, so my older daughter is getting her braces off as Saturn moves into my fifth house, but my 12-year-old son is getting braces on as Saturn moves into the fifth house. So that's a Saturnian thing happening to my children. My 2-year-old, I'm going to be having to wean him, and that's going to be hard, and to set up more boundaries with my toddler. Um, he's going from 1 to 2. 1, he's still at 1 with me very much, still very much a baby. And at 2, he's 2. He's very much his own person now starting. So that's a boundary between me and my child that's coming with Saturn's move into my fifth house. And just children gaining more responsibility and growing up. Your children are always growing, but there's definitely periods of their life where you can see that they are making bigger strides as far as growing up goes. Okay, for Scorpio risings, Pluto is going to be moving into your fourth house, Aquarius, after 14 years in your third house, which we just talked a lot about what that has been about. Pluto moving into your fourth house, things will happen that change how you will be remembered after you die. So the fourth house, a fun way of looking at it in traditional astrology, is the way you're remembered after you die. So we can look to Libra risings for the last 14 years. Pluto's trek through there. Things that have happened over the last 14 years might be things that they're remembered for after they die. And same with Scorpio rising. So things that change how you'll be remembered after you die. It might be a deep investigation into your ancestry, because the fourth house is our roots, our ancestry. It's not only our immediate family, but any old family ancestors. So I'm looking forward to that. Digging deeper into my ancestry. Pluto through the fourth house can also be deep changes to your family structure, and your home base. Um, you might be facing a big move, a big important move, a move that has great meaning that's been not taken lightly. Also, um, powerful people coming into your home, powerful uh, things happening at home. And this is a long transit. That's 20 years. Might take the whole 20 years before we see the outcomes of that transit. Okay, Mars is going to Scorpio's ninth house after that long stay in the eighth house, which we just talked to about, was a lot about debts and loans and insurance and wills and um, unearned income. So it's moving away from there finally to the ninth house. You might start taking some classes, Scorpio risings, earning certifications or diplomas. There might be a willful drive towards those things. Investigating universities. I know I'm going to be um, looking. So the ninth house is about higher learning, higher education, philosophy, religion. It's said to be the house of God. Ways of knowing. Um, Travel, world travel, long distance travel. So Mars being the will and the drive is one way to look at it. My will is going to be wrapped up in investigating universities for my daughter, who's going to be going off to college in about a year and a half. We're starting to look into taking trips to visit different colleges, but also for myself, I am looking into maybe earning some more certifications and taking some classes. Um, Mars going through the ninth house might also have something to do with your religion, churches, might be about severing ties with these things in some way. Um, Also, Mars in the ninth house, fun tidbit from Transit Simplified by Francis Sakowin and Lois Acker says there might be sex in foreign lands or with foreign people or competition or aggression related to those things and those people. Okay, again for Scorpio risings, Jupiter continues to be in our sixth house for a few more weeks. Growth and benefits from healers and hiring help will continue. Um, Generally, Jupiter in the sixth house is a good omen for our health and sicknesses or healing sicknesses. I've honestly been getting sick more though, so Jupiter can be like, just the growth and expansion of things. Like I've been getting sick, so might be a little bit more of dealing with that, but also just more work. Jupiter sixth house is the house of work, so it's been there for about the last 6 months. We've got a few months more left. Um, uh, of more work, daily grind. Been good for our daily routines, though. You might have more routines than you have had before. But my big point for Jupiter in the sixth house has been growth and benefits from healers and hiring help. Okay, moving on. Libra risings. Change my clock here. Check chat. Okay. Again, if you are just tuning in live, feel free, if it's your rising sign, to pipe in with any insight you might have or connection you might have to anything I'm saying or questions. Okay, Libra risings. Saturn is moving into your sixth house after being in your fifth house. So moving into the sixth house, structured routines, grunt work, hard work, selfless service, professional helpers, death of pets. I have seen that happen, unfortunately. Sixth house is associated with pets, and Saturn is the original planet associated with death. But professional helpers, you might be hiring help of some kind, whether it's help cleaning. And I think the sixth house is about not just helpers, but healers specifically. But traditionally, it was any servants, any hired help. So Saturn moving there might be getting serious about hiring help, hiring serious help, whether that's cleaning help. I even a page I follow, a parenting page I follow, she had a very interesting series recently about hiring a personal chef and cook for your family is often even more affordable than just cooking on your own and frees up tons of space. I mean, space and time in your life. And she's very convincing about that. So that might be something you're looking forward to or looking into, Libras, is hiring more help, whether it's cooking, cleaning, any kind of helper professionals. Um, Also, there might be a restriction around work. Maybe you work less over the next Saturn's trek over the next few years in your sixth house. Something might happen to where you um, have some kind of block around working or restriction around working your typical jobs and routine, and that eases up and you don't work. And then when Saturn leaves your sixth house in a few years, it's time to work again. Um, Maybe you have a kid. Um, could be a simple reason to maybe not work as much for a few years. Pluto is going to be entering your fifth house of children, creativity, romance, and fun and recreation. There could be some romantic charisma and intensity happening, transformation through children, intense creative output, children becoming powerful in some way. Your grown adult children, children's lives changing dramatically, creative style transforming. Again, this is something that unfolds over the next 20 years. That starts, we get a taste of it. Pay attention in March for a taste of what's to come. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold myself, so you're welcome for the raspiness, by the way. Mars on, for Libra risings, Mars on March 25th moves into your 10th house from your 9th house. So there might have been, again, what you're leaving is the 9th house stuff. So you might have been some kind of drive and will towards getting some kind of certifications. Maybe you took some kind of classes, got certified in something the last 6 months, something to do with religion or philosophy or higher education the last 6 months. And now you're finally moving on to the 10th house, the fruits of that. Your goals and career, some activation of that kind of stuff, digging deep into your goals, or struggling to prioritize your goals, disagreements in or surrounding your career, financial goals, partnership goals, something being activated around that for the next couple of months. Okay. So next up is Virgo risings. So we've gone through 6 of the signs. We've gone through Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio, and Libra. And next we'll get through Virgo, Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, and Aries. I'm going to take a short break real quick, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. I had to go stuff my face real quick because I'm starving because I'm breastfeeding still, so I'm starving all the time. Whew. Oh yeah, forgot I had my mouse. Looky there. All right, Virgo risings. Pluto is going to be leaving your 5th house and going into Aquarius, your 6th house, on March 23rd. So this next 20-year period that you're getting a taste of right now is going to be a transformation of your relationship to work, service, and health. 6 health topics. Intense work, powerful service, and powerful helpers coming into your life. I just did a reading for somebody yesterday that's Virgo rising, and she is very focused right now on, she's got kind of empty nest syndrome. All her kids are out of her home, and she wants to be of service in some way, and figure out how to be of service. So that's a very, and I told her, this isn't going to be something you figure out overnight. It's going to be something that unfolds over the next 20 years, that this is going to be something you're working on. So, and we can look to also the last 14 years, Pluto has been in your 5th house of children, creative projects, fun and recreation. So there's been this intense transformation to your relationship with your children over the past 14 years, and with children in general, and with your creative life, that you're coming out of, getting some relief there, hopefully. So yeah, transformation of relationship to work, service, and health for Virgo risings over the next 20 years. Intense work, powerful service, powerful helpers. Saturn for Virgo risings is moving into Pisces, the 7th house, on March 7th. Professional partnerships. Saturn is professional. 7th house is partnerships, and public relations. So professional, public relations related things. Possibly spouses being promoted or taking on a more professional role, or being seen as an authority figure. Career and professional life starting to gain recognition. That's related to, and I don't remember where I learned about it, but I found it very intriguing. It's relating Saturn's trek around your whole chart that takes 29 years to your professional life. So basically, when it's above the horizon, starting in the 7th house, all the way when it goes up to your 10th house and down to your 12th house, it's gaining recognition in your field at the time, and then reaching a peak of your in your field, like a peak of authority in your field, when it reaches the 10th house, and then starting to decline, and maybe you start wanting to do something new. And then when it goes under the horizon into your 1st house, it could be a complete change in what you do and what your goals and professional goals are, or just like a complete, like it's time to go into gestation mode, while Saturn's for the 14 years that Saturn will be under the horizon in your chart through the 1st and 6th house. It's working behind the scenes, and maybe not necessarily getting recognition or being an authority figure. It takes that long to be considered a professional for most people. So for Virgo rising, Saturn is ending that 14-year stay under the horizon, and you're starting to rise as a professional in your field. That begins now. So yeah, career and professional life starting to gain recognition, and you're going to reach some kind of peak in about 7 years, over the next 7 years. Saturn in the 7th house can be about relationships ending for good, or becoming even more stabilized, and even more set in stone. Could be about your partner taking on more responsibility, because the planet's trek through the 7th house isn't just about our feelings towards our relationships, but it is also about what is actually happening to our are intimate partners. Okay, so Mars for Virgo risings, Mars is moving into Cancer on March 25th, and that is Virgo rising's 11th house. It has stayed 6 months in your 10th house. And hello, my children. I see you. My little Cancer sun, Aquarius rising, and Capricorn rising, Cancer sun. I mean, Capricorn sun, Cancer rising. Okay. Okay, so Virgo rising's Mars going into your 11th house. So 11th house is about groups and friends and tribe. Can also be about hopes and wishes. So Mars there could be leadership in groups or friends, having to take on a leadership role. That isn't always Virgo's first thing they want to think of themselves as a leader, but sometimes it's time to be a leader. It could be your friends taking action, sparking action, and the groups you're in taking action or sparking action. Could be conflicts in groups or with friends, or friends experiencing violence or surgery. And it's staying near 10th house for the last 6 months. There could have been some kind of uh, Martian influence on your reputation, or your goals, or career. Maybe some severing of goals, letting go of certain goals, letting go of some kind of way of presenting yourself, or your reputation becoming more Martian in some way. Is what you had over the last 6 months. Okay, moving on to Leo. So for Leo risings, this is kind of a big one for you with Pluto moving into Aquarius, because now Pluto moves from your 6th house, which isn't exactly like a huge big deal house, to the 7th house, which is a VIP huge big deal house. So Pluto going into Aquarius for Leo risings, that's the 7th house on March 23rd. So Pluto in the 7th house for the next 20 years can be a transformation in how we relate to others. Intensity in intimate relationships, learning about power dynamics in intimate relationships and partnerships, intense and powerful devotion to a partner, marriages and divorces, intimate relationships with Plutonian people, wealthy people, powerful people, intense people, primal relationships. Pluto's going to drag you through the mud and compost you in terms of how you relate to others. When it's over, hopefully you have a lotus or some nourishing food to show for it. All right, and you're going to get a taste of that, possibilities of that, over the next few months here when Pluto dips its toe in. Okay, Saturn for Leo risings is going to be moving into your 8th house, Pisces, March 7th. Responsibilities related to death and loss. The 8th house gets associated with death and loss, and Saturn is responsibilities. Could be about death of parents or grandparents. It could be about your spouse or partner taking on debts or financial responsibility, or your spouse maturing financially, because the 8th house is about your spouse's or partner's finances. So the 8th house is also about inheritances, wills, insurance, debts, and loans, of yourself and your partners or spouses. So there could be some kind of getting serious about wills, or restructuring your wills and insurance. Um, taking a look at life insurance. If you don't have it already, it'd be a good time to get it. But also, yeah, responsibilities related to death and loss, and perhaps your spouse or partner taking on debts or financial responsibility. Okay, for Leo risings, Mars moving into Cancer in the 12th house, on March 25th, after 6 months of being in your 11th house. You might have seen some, friendships transform or, left some friendships behind or had some conflicts in your friend groups over the last 6 months, but now Mars is moving on to the 12th house. Your will and goals, somehow wrapped up in institutions like school, medical facilities, jails and prisons, perhaps leadership in those institutions. The 12th house, gets a scary reputation, but, honestly, it's not, like, really a VIP house. It can be kind of, more subtle things happening. Okay, moving on to Cancer risings. For Cancer risings, Pluto is moving into your 8th house after being in your 7th house for the last 14 years. It could be income from things other than your own work, more reliance on your spouse's income, government benefits, investments, or inheritance. Your spouse's or partner's income transforming intensely, powerful change to your debts, the importance of wills and insurance. I know a lot of Cancer risings for whom that can apply to for over the next few years. So, yeah, again, income from things other than your own work, more reliance on spouse's income, government benefits, investments, or inheritance. Your spouse's income transforming intensely or powerfully, powerful change to your debts, importance of wills and higher insurance. Okay. Saturn for Cancer risings is moving from your 8th house to your 9th house. Um, Ninth house of higher education, religion, God, philosophy, um, long distance travel, ways of knowing the world. Um, so it could be any of those things, helping your professional development. Saturn being your professional development. So traveling for professional development, or even if you're traveling and it's not necessarily for professional development, it might benefit that in some way. Um, Also getting serious about, religion or your philosophy on life or your ways of, relating to God. Maybe you'll take some classes or go back to school. Saturn can do that. Saturn in the ninth house can do that, over the next few years. Um, okay, for Cancer risings, Mars moves into your first house. That's kind of a big deal. It's been in your 12th house for the last 6 months. There might have been some behind the scenes stuff happening in medical facilities, schools, churches, institutions like that. And Martian things, maybe things to do with surgery or uh, being pierced in some way. Now, as of March 25th, Mars moves into your first house. And this can be very literal. Mars is a planet of surgery and cutting. My Cancer rising sun is having surgery to have his tonsils partially removed on April 28th, and Mars will be exactly conjunct his um, 16-degree Cancer ascendant at the date of his surgery. That's how we figure out what things mean in astrology. We don't just assign them meanings arbitrarily. We see over and over again that Mars is involved when people undergo surgery. So we assign Mars surgery. So that won't be so quite literal for everybody, but it can be. It can, in general, be for Cancer risings an increased will or drive to compete. It can be increase in aggression or just learning about your aggression and willful principle. Um, a good way to channel Mars in a constructive way is to wear more red. If you want to feed Mars, Mars needs to be fed, or else it can show up in ways we don't like violence. But you can wear more red. You can do healthy competitive things, be more athletic, get involved in sports, working out. So this is a lot of energy, and you need something um, to give this energy to. You need an outlet for this energy over the next couple of months that will be very strong. Okay. We're going to move on to Gemini. Love you too, guys. Thank you. Okay. Okay, for Gemini risings. Pluto is moving into Aquarius on March 23rd, and that is your ninth house after spending 14 years in your eighth house. So we might see some intense transformation to your relationship with God, religion, philosophy, um, foreign lands, higher education. After the last 14 years of Pluto being in your eighth house of debts and inheritance, wills, insurance. I hope you've come out of that transit with a will and some life insurance. And if you don't, you still have a few weeks left to take care of that. Tie up those Pluto in the eighth house loose ends. Get ready for Pluto in the ninth house. Maybe you do some big traveling. But yeah, overall, intense transformation and powerful stuff to come out of your relationship to the divine. Maybe it's time, if you don't have a relationship to the divine, over the next 20 years, you're going to develop one. Okay. Also, for Gemini rising, Saturn moves into your 10th house. So what we were talking about before for Virgo rising is how when Saturn reaches the top of the chart, it's some kind of peak of whatever you're doing right now, career-wise, and there's going to start to be a transformation after this, where maybe you do the same thing but a little differently, in a different role, or maybe you come up with something completely different that you want to do with your life and your goals in your daily life. Saturn in the 10th house. Let's see what Luis and Francis have to say here. Ambition for career, position, and status, increased professional responsibility, public recognition for professional achievements, increased responsibility in relationships with superiors, governmental or established business institutions, peak of achievement if well aspected, social deprivation and unemployment if afflicted, increased worldly responsibilities, active involvement in political affairs, administrative leadership and responsibility, association with older established individuals, interaction with professional or government institutions, conservative professional or political attitudes, fall from power and public disgrace if afflicted. We can look to who would it be? So Taurus risings for what Saturn through the 10th house has been like for them. I would say the same thing as I read from the book, though. The increased professional responsibility, more responsibility in your for your goals. Peak experiences that are perhaps Saturnian and of a professional nature is another way of putting that. Could be authority figures coming into your career and goals too. Okay. Cancer. Mars is moving into Cancer on March 25th. So for Gemini risings, that's the second house. This can be a lot of will and energy towards financial matters, skills, resources. It could be inflammation of financial matters. There could be some kind of money through martial means, money through competition, money through being more aggressive, or work that is more aggressive, or maybe even just like a surgeon is a very Martian job, or somebody that cuts hair. They use scissors in their job every day. They're getting money from that. Just one way of looking at that. Using sharp tools as a way of getting money. Okay. We're going to move on to Taurus risings. So for Taurus risings, Pluto is moving to your 10th house. This is a big, long, slow 20-year transformation to your career and goals and your public reputation. After the last 14 years of it being in your 9th house of religion, philosophy, world travel, and your way of knowing the world, has gone through a complete transformation. And now for Taurus risings, it's on to your career and goals and your public reputation. It could be reputation as a powerful person, reputation as an intense person, reputation as a deep person starting to grow. Saturn just left your 10th house and is going into your 11th house. And this can be friendships and groups of like joining professional groups, friendships with more professional people, and authority figures, or becoming an authority figure in your groups of friends, being seen as a responsible professional person in your groups, or groups of friends. It can also be joining groups with your parents, Saturn being the parents. Okay, and then Mars is moving into your 3rd house after being in your 2nd house, so some big stuff happened over the last 6 months with your money. So whatever meaning you make of that, whatever was going on over the last 6 or 7 months with your money matters, there's gonna be some alleviation of that as Mars moves into your 3rd house. It might have something to do Mars moving into your 3rd house for the next couple months have something to do with your siblings, your transportation. I'd get maintenance done on your vehicles. You might be buying a new vehicle. There might be some kind of breakdown. There might be some kind of energy put into your sibling relationships. Or even chance of violence or accidents for your siblings or neighbors or in your neighborhood. Could be even just like arguments with your siblings. Okay, moving on to Aries. Aries risings. Pluto is going to leave your 10th house and be moving into your 11th house. So over the last 14 years, there's been an intense transformation of your goals in your career. It might not, what you're doing now for a career probably isn't what you thought you'd be doing 14 years ago. Now that it's moving into and also your reputation has changed. Who people thought you were 14 years ago is completely transformed now. Probably into more of seeing you as a powerful person. Now it's moving into your 11th house, so this can be over the next 20 years a complete transformation of your friend groups and your tribe, and your hopes and wishes. Hopes and wishes are a little bit different than goals. But Pluto there for the next 20 years, it might be intense friends, powerful friends, becoming more of an important factor. Okay, yeah, and that unfolds over the next 20 years. Saturn is going to be moving from your 11th house to your 12th house. So Saturn over the last 3 years has been like professional friends, hanging out in more professional groups, being professional together, hopes and wishes tied up in professional type things, wishes to be seen as an authority figure and such. Now, Saturn, that cycle we talked about earlier with Saturn going through the whole chart. Now, when it goes into the 12th house, this is a time when our professional goals in our career might start to dissolve or change a little bit. This is kind of a mutable period for our career where we kind of get the feeling we might not be sticking with what we're doing anymore. We've kind of already peaked with what we're doing, and we don't really care to get much further with it. We want to do something a little different. And over the next 2 years, especially, but then we'll still be doing what we're doing, but thinking about doing something else. And then after that, for the next 14 years after that, we might see this whole restructuring of what you're what you're doing with your life, and your professional goals might completely change. Um, a lot of people I just see, if it's age appropriate, Saturn through the 12th house is when people start thinking about retirement. Is a very textbook interpretation of that. Um, Also, though, it could be Saturnian in a more modern way of looking at the 12th house, which these guys are going to talk about. Let's see, Saturn through the 12th house. Professional responsibilities, well, that's traditional, involving hospitals, asylums, and institutions. Professional involvement with psychology or medicine. Imprisonment, institutionalization, or incarceration if afflicted. Professional work behind the scenes. Secrecy in professional affairs. Involvement with secret organizations or government work. Interest in introspective spiritual disciplines. Serious interest in a meditative life or involvement with religious retreats. Disciplined probing of the unconscious. Self-undoing through unconscious hangups if afflicted. Difficulties through secret enemies. Moodiness and emotional depression if afflicted. Use of devious underhanded means to achieve ambitions if afflicted. Culmination of karma. Okay. And also for Aries, March is always a big month. That's for Aries risings, the sun is in your first house. For Aries suns, it's your sun return. And for Aries risings, having the sun in the first house is kind of like a sun return. It's kind of like your birthday month, where the focus is on you, and your health and your vitality and you being center stage. You also have a few more months left of Jupiter in your first house, Aries risings. There's been big expansion of it could be literal physical expansion. I was pregnant once with Jupiter in my first house, or expansion through other means. Philosophical expansion, that's a very Jupiter thing. I went back to school once with Jupiter in my first house. For my master's degree, when I went back to school for my master's degree, it was with Jupiter in my first house. So something, some kind of religious, spiritual, um, or academic expansion of knowledge with Jupiter in your first house for the next few months too. And also Mercury for the month of March will be in at the end of March. It starts. So yeah, okay. So not the sun goes into Aries at the end of March, like March 20th, 21st. And Mercury does around like a few days before that. A time of increased communication, short trips, reading, writing, an intense need to learn. Okay, Mars is going to be moving into your fourth house after time in your third house. There might have been arguments with siblings, or neighbors, or disagreements, or having to take a leadership role with siblings or neighbors. Might have done stuff with your car, or modes of transportation over the last 6 months. There might have been something happening with that. Now it's moving into your fourth house. Let's see. On March 25th, Mars moves into your fourth house, and this could be a time of taking on a leadership role at home, wanting to be in charge at home. It could be competitiveness in the home, or maybe even just like working out at home, sports in the home. It could be aggression in the home, increased arguments, or just this sense that you need to take charge at home. Um, there is a small chance thing to look out for with like fires in the home. So make sure you have uh, extra checks and balances in place for that. Okay. All right. And to wrap this up, I just want to add, I saw somebody point out, for all the signs and for everybody. So Saturn's moved through Pisces over the next few years. Pisces is a mutable sign. That means mutable energy is up in the air, whereas the cardinal signs, the cardinal energy is like that energy of the moment the coin is flipped in a coin toss. The mutable energy for the mutable signs is while the coin is up in the air, it can go either way, and then the fixed energy is after the coin lands. Okay, so Saturn is a mutable sign. Pisces is a mutable sign, and Saturn's going to be there for the next 3 years. So it's kind of an in between time, and we have this time right now where Saturn and Pluto are changing signs. And Pluto's, not quite all the way changed, though. It's going to come in and out of Capricorn and Aquarius over the next couple of years. But by 2025, this period of between 2023 and 2025, while Saturn is in this mutable sign of Pisces, is an in-between period of transition. And by 2025, everything's going to be completely different. All the outer planets will have changed signs, some of them multiple times, like Jupiter will change signs every year. But by 2025, Uranus will have moved on from Taurus to Gemini. Neptune will have moved on from Pisces to Aries. Saturn will have moved through Pisces and into Aries, and Pluto will be in Aquarius for good. So yeah, we're in this like transitionary period, and 20 by 2025, the end of 2025, everything will be very different, and I'm interested to see how that plays out. So yeah, thank you for joining me. If you have any questions or any stories to tell about how you're seeing this unfold in your life, I welcome your comments. And if you want to find out more about how to work with me, you can go to www.astrologywild.com. I have my list of services there. Sometimes I update my blog, and I am trying to figure out how to do more video uploads. So keep an eye on the channel for that. And I guess I see everybody that does videos has to say this. Like and subscribe. Okay. All right. Thank you. Love you guys. Bye. That's it.